So with that, all right, everyone, I guess if I can get your attention again. So thank you all so much for your patience. Appreciate being here, and I want to introduce Dr. Rex LaMore, who is the Director of MSC's Center for Community and Economic Development and Urban Planning Professor, and will help us get our minds in the right place for this comprehensive planning process. So thank you, Rex, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bartley. I'm grateful for the opportunity to chat about this important work of building a comprehensive plan that creates the kind of vision we all want to see here in East Lansing, of course, in the greater Lansing community. So I know some of you, did you all introduce yourself already? Could we do that?
Let's do it.
All right, somebody start.
The new guy, yeah. I'm Richard Ensky. I'm one of the co-founders of LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. My title is the Economic Development Manager with a specific focus here in Union County. So I will be working with a lot of the smaller communities as well as Lansing proper. So nice to be here.
Hello, everyone. Janet Lilly, Assistant Vice President for Community Relations at Michigan State. So good to see you all.
Marsha Van Ness, Red Cedar Community Association, Senior Commission, and background in community relations.
Steve Truth, Michigan State University Campus Planner. Hi, I'm Larry Rosen. I'm retired, but I'm on the East Lansing Housing Commission. I'm a board member of the Capital Area Housing Partnership, and as Janet mentioned, I guess my claim to fame is that I was formerly the Michigan State Demographer, among other things.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Gilbert. I am a human development planner with the Tri-Columbia Regional Planning. So we are the regional planning agency for the
My name is Cindy Kyle. I'm a resident of East Lansing.
Yay.
I'm John Lindstrom. I'm a resident of Kyle.
I'm Grace Vitti. I'm the associate planner for the city of East Lansing.
Alicia Wright, I'm the Senior Planner for the City of East Lansing.
Annette Erwin. I'm the Director of Planning, Building, and Development for the city of East Lansing.
Beverly Bonnie. I serve on the zoning board of appeals. I'm a member of this church. Welcome. Yeah, we always do here. And also serve on the commission for updating the municipal plan. And I'm retired. Served in the legal community representing municipalities for over 2 years. So this has been exciting to serve.
Sally Newton, interested resident of Glen Canyon.
Thank you.
I'm Gail Kendall. I'm another interested resident from the city of East Lansing.
Most important title today.
I'm Barbara Anderson. I'm a planner. I'm in East Lansing. I'm involved in a lot of committees, including the environmental.
Michael Christensen. I serve on the Lansing Historic District Commission, member of the Comprehensive Plan Coordinating.
Do we want to do the immediate folks here?
No, maybe.
Sure. I'm Colin Jankowski. I am the East Lansing neighborhood reporter for Fox News.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kristen Wells. I'm the photojournalist with WILX News.
Thank you. And then my colleague here.
I'm Charlotte
Yeah. Well, there's so many of my colleagues here in the planning profession. This is going to be so first grade-y and, but Mr. Bartley asked me to just sort of give an orientation to why we do comprehensive planning, what's it about. And so forgive me if all of this sounds too pedestrian and pinned down, but it is one of the most important functions that we perform as a local government in developing guiding principles and ordinances that really manage the development of our community, our physical development, and in some ways, even more and more our social, environmental, and economic development. So, I'm so glad that some of my colleagues are here, and certainly all of you feel free to add. I want this to be a dialogue. I got about 5 or 6 slides that Ms. Peterson helped pull together today to sort of guide our conversation. But I hope that you'll all contribute to this process. So the question is, why do we plan? Come on, I'm waiting to hear. We don't know. Why do we plan? Because we got nothing else to do? What are the reasons that we plan? Why do we do this?
Public safety. Setting guidelines.
So we know where we're going.
So we know where we're going, right? That's one of the paradigms that we hear in planning school, right? If we don't know where we're going, it doesn't matter how we get there, right? So planning helps us get direction to our work.
Right, so throughout their community engagement. So
To engage,
you know, the process could be more important than the product.
right? Absolutely, so much more important.
Quality of life. Thinking about where we've been, moving forward in possibly different direction. What do we want to be when we grow up?
What do we want to be? What do we want to become?
Change is constant. We plan constantly.
Which is one of the challenges of planning, because change is constant. And I'll talk a little bit about, we'll talk about this. One of the tools that we use to anticipate what the future might be is trend analysis. But nowadays, because trends aren't as effective as they used to be, because things are changing. What we call the black swans, right? Unexpected changes, unexpected events. Did you have something you want to happen? One of the reasons I bring this topic up with students and colleagues is one of the reasons we plan is to reduce error. Because in error, we make mistakes and bad things happen. So we try to anticipate what the future is likely to be. So we reduce the potential for error, which is something along the lines of you were saying, you know, to ensure public health and safety. We want to reduce the amount of mistakes that we make and thus reduce error and the consequences of errors, right? And we know because there are consequences for making mistakes. And so we try to reduce that by planning, but we're not always good at it. Okay. Cheers. I'll send this PowerPoint to land, and I'll send a PowerPoint to them. But these are some of the elements of why we plan, and you know, to create vibrant, inclusive communities, efficient, well-maintained infrastructure, safe and convenient mobility options, attract environmentally friendly communities. So these are all elements of the activities that we incur in the planning process to try to create the kind of spaces that we all want to live and work and play in. So what tools do we use to plan? I mentioned one, we use trend analysis, which is becoming a lesser valuable tool for us these days because things aren't as predictable, particularly around issues of climate change. Good Lord, we just had a terrible, yeah, I have to be careful what I say, right? We just had a storm event here yesterday in some parts of our state. And we're seeing more and more frequent these kind of unanticipated events that occur. And then, of course, all of us survived the COVID thing. You know, again, an unanticipated event, which we should have known was coming, and we should be thinking about the next one because viruses never sleep, right? But, you know, we just don't think out that far. Some of us, we plan as far as what do I wear today? And that's about as far as we get. So some of the tools that we use are like some of our community engagement work. Like Steve said, you know, we got it. We need to involve the community in the process because it's a shared vision. Otherwise, it won't work. It's harder to do, I should say. If you have to rely upon your regulatory enforcement policy. So we do data analytics to try to identify trends. What's the trend that the governor is yakking about now? Trending the population trends. What's the trend that she's worried about? That she's trying to get others of us worried about?
Brain tree.
Yeah.
Just no problem.
younger people. So you end up with a theoretically.
Yeah.
Look at
Well, we're smart demographer. You're the other study.
Well,
The trends have changed that end though.
I mean, to put it very bluntly, you go out a few years and there's going to be a lot of older people who are going to be depending upon a service provision and economics and so on by a diminishing number of younger people who are paying taxes and doing jobs and so on and so forth. So we have this little imbalance that we're looking at. It's not a comfortable.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? We're worried about potential error. And these things don't happen overnight. So the needs that we need to meet, the housing needs, the transportation needs, it doesn't occur overnight. We need to anticipate them, provide for them, the healthcare needs, the educational needs that our young people and others need. And so we have to anticipate them and prepare for them. And so that when that trend hits, the resources are there to make life livable and to some extent maybe enjoyable, you know. So we think about the patterns of events that we can measure. Not all things are measurable, and then based on those trends, we try to, and we look at the curve, you know, that suggests is it a rising trend? Is it a declining trend? Is it a flat trend? Is it a desirable trend? And if not, what do we want to do about it? And I taught environmental planning for 20 years. So I'm going to take a little bit of exception with this preoccupation with more people. Why is that better? What goes with more people? More trash, more consumption, more greenhouse gas emissions, more stuff. So from an environmental perspective, I'm not sure more is better. But I'm a voice in the wilderness on this. I hear the other issues related. We need certainly skilled people in certain areas. We can be strategic on this. It's not just more, it's strategic pieces of what we need. And again, trends can help us figure that out. You know, are we helping to create the kinds of resources and people that we need to help us survive in whatever the future might be, which is hard to predict, right? And we do some of this, but first we got to look at what things are happening now. Look at our current land use. I'm sure, Mr. Bartley, you've got your team already out there doing your current land use plan. What's the current plan? What properties? I mean, this is where planning gets very detailed. What are the parcels and which ones? What's happening with them? Right? What's in line with our current zoning? What's out of zoning? What is vacant that we may want to infill? What is abandoned that we may want to remove? What's in need of refurbishment? So you do your current environmental assessment. This is laborious work. Nowadays, with some of the remote sensing tools that we have, we can get more of this done. Takes a set of talent that we have to have. Takes financial resources from the city to do it. I'm sure you probably don't have enough of that, but it takes the resources to do it. But you need to look at what do we got now? What's going on now on our land, in our community? So that then we can anticipate what the future might be based on where we want to go from our vision statement, right? All right. So what is the comprehensive plan? It's the effort. Stop. What do y'all want to do? What is the comprehensive plan? Come on, Steve, what's comprehensive?
It's comprehensive.
Yeah.
It's got to be inclusionary. It's got to be diverse.
Who else has an opinion? You got it. Sure, you got to figure it out.
Looked at all the factors together and how they interact.
Try to identify as many of the elements of our living experience and our dying experience, because we have to plan for cemeteries. We're required to do that.
It's a guide. It's not a mandate, but it's a guide. it needs to be moving into the future.
It looks like a long.
Yeah, it looks long term. Yeah.
Tries to anticipate long-term trends. You're revisiting your current master plan. The state required us a few years ago to occasionally look at these plans, because historically they weren't always attended to as they should have been. So now every 5 years we got to at least say we looked at it. That's what, and you're in that process. I think you've agreed to redo them.
It's an amendment.
Yeah, it's an amendment. You're fulfilling your statutory requirement of, okay, we looked at it. But I think you're also engaging the community and trying to anticipate what would have not been seen the last time you redid this. So that's a good thing, and I applaud you for that and trying to incorporate whatever changes that occurred, and they have in our community, as you well know. So thank you for taking the time and effort to do that. So it's an effort to try to bring it all together, all the pieces, so that we can, again, avoid error. So that we avoid error. And Miss Peterson pulled together a nice little visual here with some of the elements that are included in a comprehensive plan. She did a great job on these slides. And you can pick out pieces that you may have particular expertise or interest in. Parks and Rec is a part of your plan. How are we going to direct? Council strategic plan, water. I know the East Lansing sewage treatment plant seems to be constantly under construction. So, and that's important, right? And so these are all elements of that plan, that infrastructure, the built. This is the thing, a lot of folks don't think about our built environment, not only what's on the surface, which you see, but what's underneath it that needs to be in place, like sewer and water. And nowadays, internet, optical, the 21st century information system. And we don't see that, and we're not really good at thinking about things we don't see, right? It's one of our limits as species. So the comprehensive plan is about trying to encompass as much of the elements of our lived experience and try to anticipate what's going on and try to, again, make decisions based on information, some opinion and vision, but mostly about what's happening. Anybody else have a thought on this?
As a non-planner, it seems to me, I think this is correct, but you need to have something that's comprehensive so that you don't have a multiplicity of plans of particular sectors going off in one direction or another that would conflict with what other people want or other people or other sectors may need. So it would seem to me it's also a sort of an insurance plan that you don't find that you screwed something up 5 years down the road. Is that reasonable?
That's the intent. Do we do it very well? How many times do we see the road get torn up again and again and again? How many frustrating? But let me give you a very specific example right on. I did my time on my local planning commission for 20 years. And one of the things we discovered, I was off in Williamstown Township, and we discovered that our school district had a very different vision of the future than we did. And they had this trajectory of thousands of new students, and all these green fields that we have now are going to turn into subdivisions. And they were planning along that trajectory from the school district, because bigger schools are better. And we said, no. We want green open space. We want development to occur in the city where our built environment already exists. Our underground infrastructure is already in place. We don't want this sprawl. We want to be the green space between Detroit and Lansing. And so far, we're doing a pretty good job on that. If you go down there and you see the green space, that's us. And, so we had to have that heart-to-heart conversation. And it came to a point when the school district went out and they wanted to build a high school out on Williamston Road, North Williamston Road. And the voters said, no, reinvest in the existing schools. revamp the existing infrastructure in the city. We're not gonna extend sewer and water out to that school, which you know where that, once you put the sewer and water out there, everything else follows, right? And so for that very reason, you know, we had two different planning work institutions working, government, public institutions, and a very different vision for the future. And we got it together, it wasn't fun, but you know, we agreed, and fortunately, the voters also agreed. They denied the millage to the new school and said, you go back where you came from, reevaluate existing infrastructure. So that was interesting. So talk to your school district.
School superintendent is on the coordination committee.
Excellent. Make sure he brings a plan. Because they all think bigger is better there with that sort of paradigm. You got to watch out. All right. Let me go back here. No, I don't want to go that. There, she put her sources. Good job, Ms. Peterson. Okay, why is the vision statement important? This is your existing vision statement in your current master plan. Why is this important? Why is it important to have the vision statement? Come on, Ms. Gilbert, I know.
I do know, but I was trying to leave space for others.
Okay.
Actually, your resident.
This look again. I want to correct one of your statements. That's where I was going to get today. One of the.
I did tell him earlier, I had a new earlier.
Yes, he did.
assistant, and I told him.
This is not the reason that the community, and I'm sort of getting ahead of myself, but I want you to hear this. The reason a community does a comprehensive plan is it gives legal authority to control private land use. So there is a telling going on here between local government and the community, and you me, as a private landowner. Only through a good planning document do you have the potential in the courts to say no to a private landowner or yes to a private landowner. I mean, those of us who've been in the field know how the courts are. But in general, if you're consistent with your plan and your ordinances are consistent with your plan, you can deny certain actions by private landowners. Okay, now you can go. Planning does have authority to control. Sorry.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's critical because if we don't do this right, if you don't connect the dots here in your planning process between your vision, plan, and your ordinances, then you're going to get challenged anyway. But you have a better chance of succeeding in the courts when the private developer or the private landowner comes to you and says, I want to do this. And why is government telling me I can't do this? Why does government tell people they can't do certain things with their private land?
Health, safety.
Thank you.
Just for starters.
Because what you do with your land affects my property. And so the way that we reconcile that in a democratic system is through this complex process of planning and zoning. Nobody would have invented this if they would have thought, you know, other than having, you know, some sort of authoritarian government like university, you guys. You know, we have to do it through a consensus building process. We all kind of agree this is what we want to be. And then through that process, we now have the legal authority to do something in the United States that we don't like to have done, which is tell people what to do with their private property. We don't like that. That is one of our values. I get to do what I want with what I own. And here comes government telling me what to do. And the only way we get to do that in our system is through this process of planning. Otherwise, you get sued, your rights get taken, people's individual rights get taken, community's interest gets lost. So this is why it's important. We value private ownership and the right of private people to make private decisions about what they do with what they own. On the other hand, we understand that some of the things that we do affect our neighbors and affect our public health. And so for us to say no, or yes, depending on what is proposed, we have to have this process. That's the end of the presentation. That's your takeaway today. So anyway, this is your vision statement that you currently have, and I know that there's some articulation of thinking maybe you want to revisit your vision statement and try to incorporate some of the concerns that have arisen in the past few years, both through our awareness, we're getting a little bit smarter about things, and also through some trends that you may have been experiencing here in the East Lansing community. So these are some of the things that you're trying to articulate. You want to have strong neighborhoods and enhanced public access, vibrant economy, and high-performing government. So, okay, so I just did this with you. This is the key element of why you're doing this process. This is the relationship between your planning, your comprehensive plan, and the ordinances that guide the private use of land, right? And so you need to do a good job on your planning. The courts have told us in several occasions where local planning ordinances have been out of line with the comprehensive vision, or not, that you can't tell somebody not to do that. And so we've seen cases where individual rights were taken without due process. The due process is the planning process. And, that's, you're likely, you're putting yourself at jeopardy. So you got to have a good idea what you want to be, which guides what you're, how you're going to create your community, which guides your ordinances, which guides the use of the land, the private use here. Comments. So Janet, that'll be a test. So it regulates private land use, right? You can say no, but only if you do your homework. All right. So what are your emerging challenges here? What are some of the things that you all are concerned about as residents and leaders here in this region, this community? What are some of the issues that you are concerned about that you think we need to be attending?
Economic inequality.
Yes, economic inequality.
My concern is really a baby one in comparison to what I hear here, and that would be trash. Why do I have to see it?
You know how much trash we generate as individuals on a weekly basis?
Oh God, just in my house.
4.9 pounds per person per week.
How much was it?
4.9 people. At least that was the latest EPA average I looked at. I stopped teaching environmental planning because the numbers keep going up. Most of the negative.
So tell us more. Your concern is trash. Is it how we dispose of our trash in the city, or is it trash that you see in the city?
Yeah, but it's open disposal.
Well, in the Bailey neighborhood, we obviously always had a problem with student renters who are happy to have a party and seem to forget they need to clean up afterwards. And you end up with a lot of broken bottles, a lot of other stuff that, you've got kids playing, you got older folks, wandering around. So there's not just an attractiveness thing, but there's also a safety issue. A health issue.
Yes.
Rodents and stuff like that.
Not being very neighborly.
No, and that's another, we've had lots of conversations, the city's done lots of stuff, the university's done lots of stuff, and actually it's been a little better since COVID, but both cycles too.
Other concerns, emerging issues and concerns that you all are sensitive to as you think about what we ought to be considering as we plan for the future. Where's my greenhouse gas person? Come on. Are you my greenhouse gas?
I'm not today.
Okay.
Not today, but I can be.
Okay.
I'll say housing. I know that this is already something being considered, so it's
Yeah.
not new. But I think that's not just a local issue. I think that's a regional issue. I think, probably speaking from personal experience, I guess, studying too, I lived in East Lansing for 5 years while I was a student at MSU, and from when I started to when I finished, you know, Grand River looked completely different. And now Michigan Avenue looks completely different, and for various reasons, but I think that you have investment in certain places and then kind of the investment not happening in others, I guess, in terms of student housing, if I'm willing to offer that perspective, because that's my experience. So yeah, that's what I have to offer.
There's too much or too little, it's too costly or not costly enough. How does that play out?
Those are important aspects to the housing question. I mean, housing is a large box that has lots of little boxes. Remember the comprehensive plan boxes, lots of little boxes. Is it affordability? Is it quality? Is it single family? Is it senior? Is it accessible? Is it, you know, there's a lot of different boxes.
Right, it's all of the above.
Yes, exactly.
And
It's always
creating that balance.
right.
Of those, I wouldn't call them competing interests, I like the individuality involved, but there is this tension. And you may as well be honest about it. This tension about how is this all going to play out within our neighborhoods, but also to provide affordable housing and equity within an equitable mindset. And I think we can get there because we certainly got the talent and I think we can do that. But it's really becoming very obvious that that's going to be the hot topic.
Could you be more precise about that?
Sure, I think there's I want to make sure that I'm efficient in the way I describe it. There's a need, or there's an expressed need for more affordable housing. And there's discussion about what that housing should look like. Should it be dense? Should it be multi-story, high density, on the outskirts of neighborhoods, within established neighborhoods, downtown, where, so it's where, when, how, and why about affordable housing. But I think there's also probably an element of, I'm not speaking for myself, but I think there's an element of, really, we need more housing? And you get that kind of reaction. I don't know the answer, but I think that it's an expressed need. I can give one example, our own family, our daughter and son-in-law wanted to move back from Chicago. They wanted to buy their first home, affordable home. They wanted East Lansing. They wanted to come back to East Lansing. There was very little to choose from in a 6-month window, and ended up in Oakland, much to our dismay, much to their dismay. But that's one example of probably thousands of examples. So it's homeownership, first-time homeownership, but it's also availability of housing for those who are trying to work towards first-time homeownership.
And when we moved 30 years ago into Bailey, there were very few homes for sale.
That's the same here.
And maybe 3 or 4, and out of those we chose one.
Yeah.
And the people who next just moved in at the same time, just about. The house around the corner, we had 3 or 4 different people who lived there. I didn't really consider that there was a paucity of homes. There were just not enough homes for sale that looked like what I wanted to look like at the price I wanted it to look like that in the location I wanted. So there's a lot of those factors that were very personal to me, and ultimately, you know, one of those factors.
The housing is also obviously a national.
Yes.
And so, obviously, in my mind, East Lansing shouldn't not consider the housing question, but is this also something that maybe would be better for communities in the whole area to be combined? Try to work
Like the university. You're gonna give up your independent authority to decide what you wanna do as a regional government agency? No. Yeah.
Marvin saying he's writing a live movie now. This is crazy.
I'd like to add something else here. Because of, cost of developing new housing is enormous. And that also needs to be taken into account. The factor being, who will have the resources, financial resources to develop that? Will be private developers? Will there be an interest in developers doing this? Will it be through public or semi or quasi-public means? And again, it's where the land's going to be available, which is a community interest, but also where the funding is going to come from to build the kind of housing that we need. And it's not a simple answer. It was addressing it. And yes, this is a national question. There have been people in East Lansing giving talks in Michigan. I think it was 2 years ago. Was the Architecture Association had a couple of housing people come in and talk about national issues. And this is clear. It's every place, every single place.
It doesn't make it any less important here.
No.
And that we here local conference. And this issue of affordability, but so let me just ask a couple questions. The landing, have you done a build out? You know what that is, right? You take your current zoning, look at your current density, and you determine how much more under our current zoning would we be able to accommodate with our current parcels of land. So you do a build out analysis. So you okay, so I can find if you need more dense. So accommodate the you got this figure, and then you got to do your trends. What's the demand? Where's it coming from? Is it single family? Is it student? You face all. Is it students? Is it single family? Is it seniors? Affordability? You know, and then you try to work through that based on your current land use patterns, and then you can identify. Do we need it here, or should we collaborate with some of our sister jurisdictions who can provide some of that housing? You know, think about your regional fair share. Have you heard that term? Have you heard that? What is your regional fair share of affordable housing? You know, in terms of what is your average income in the region? What can people afford? Is East Lansing providing its fair share, or are you relying on other jurisdictions to provide low-income affordable housing? You know, other places. And so these are some of the questions as you think through your housing challenge, you should try to give thought to.
But also we have to think about, you know, universities admitting more students. So we have a greater population of students wanting affordable housing or rental support. So there's that, and then we have these big Detroit companies coming in and buying some of our affordable and making them into these party houses in our nearby residential neighborhoods.
Well, so Steve, what's, you may not know, you might, what are they projecting in terms of student loan gains over the next?
They have not published anything formal that I've seen.
But last
So our demographer hearing, they support me in this. If we look at the bubble, we're likely to see less college-age students. Now, that may not, I mean, MSU might survive, but a lot of universities are not surviving because they're finding declining students. So you may not feel that pressure in the future, but it requires some level of conversation. You don't just have your private, the East Lansing School District, you got this other gigantic institution next door that you can sit down with. So, and say, have an honest conversation about where you're planning to go here, so that we can anticipate what your demands might be on the student, so that we can plan effectively.
Finally, Rex, I mean, my answer to that would be the emerging challenge, or maybe the biggest challenge, my opinion, is sort of differing perceptions and differing priorities. And we just have to align those. So we have our regional issues, you know, and you're saying, well, if you don't build it here, where's it gonna go, right? Or that's here to this complete similar community. But that's the purpose to me of the coordinating committees. Let's coordinate our efforts, you know, and make sure that we're at least
And
aware
you don't
of
have-
what else.
My hope is you don't think about having to do this on. You look, you reach out to your neighbors, your other jurisdictions, say, hey, look, let's negotiate an arrangement. We'll take a portion of the challenge, if you'll take a portion of the challenge. And together we might be able to come out of this better for both of them, you know, for the communities here in the region. You know, as opposed to everybody trying to do it alone. Same thing with the economic development. You know, we're all competing for that business to come in our community, and we're giving them tax dollars to do it, and then go on there. And this is that economic equity challenge. How do we got to make it affordable to live here? We have to provide needed goods and services that are affordable to the average income, if not. Now think about this. So what if East Lansing, this kind of speaks to me, one of the issues you were raising. What if you adopted an ordinance that, you know, a rent control ordinance? Dead silence. Okay, well, first of all, you gotta get it in your plan.
Well, first of
You
all,
gotta get it in your plan. You gotta try to
first of
control
all,
it.
it's illegal.
And the state, yeah, but the state is not unchangeable. You know, we have intelligent leaders, we have intelligent leaders in state government who, through efforts by the people, could make differences. You're right. Right now in the state of Michigan, primarily because Ann Arbor tried to do it because they're struggling, similar to I feel that we feel here in East Lansing. They tried to put a rent control ordinance. They're not illegal nationally. Other parts of the United States do it. It's our choice in Michigan to do it. So we could, maybe with good leadership.
There's a bill in the legislature right now.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe we just do it in certain jurisdictions that have certain criteria, meet certain criteria, like issues related to economic equity. You know, we're punishing people to live here. Well, they can't live here. They can't afford it. You know, so we need to provide for that.
So is that an emerging challenge in our community? When I heard Cindy over here, she had this challenge 30 years ago.
It's not an emerging challenge. I think that's partially the nature of the uniqueness of East Lansing being a university community. But it also is not unique in that it's not only community, but also is to a large university.
One of the questions that's been coming up in my mind, unlike Williamstown Township, we don't got a lot of green fields.
Hey, you can put it in your plan.
I mean, let's be honest. Well, there are spots which we have done in the past. So what kind of extra problem does that create for us as we look at issues like affordable housing or how we're going to handle transportation or other kinds of things? I mean, we could probably build affordable housing if we decided to buy a bunch of houses and tear them down and
This is how you negotiate with your neighbors.
I see. Okay.
Okay, you know, we'll take a piece of the action, and if you'll take a piece of the challenge, you know, we'll work on this together. So, you know, if we are, you know, I asked about a build out, you may already have reached your density for the current zone. Doesn't mean you can't change your zoning, but you may have already reached your density.
Why we have hotels along Michigan Avenue.
You know, that's part of your zoning. So, if that's your case, then you negotiate with your partners, you know, like for example, on my community, we did 425s with the city of Lansing because we didn't want to build our own sewer plant, right? So we just said, you extend your sewer and we'll share the taxes. And they agreed. You can do that. You have 425s in East Lansing?
Yes.
What, on the north side?
All around.
Okay. So, you gotta talk to your neighbors, you know, so you may not be the best place for affordable housing, but if your neighbors are carrying the affordable housing burden for you and recognizing that some of that might also have social and economic costs associated with it, think about who we're talking, the people who really, we might be looking at in these places, seniors or single mothers who can't afford to live anywhere else. Well, if they're carrying that burden for you, then you say, what can we do to help you with that burden? So you get out, you gotta negotiate. Don't try to do it yourselves, please. We're never gonna succeed as a region if we all try to do it ourselves. It's never gonna be the place that I think any of us want to see.
In the build out analysis is one of the components, an analysis of the age and condition of some of the structures in the higher density areas.
You could add it, it's not common, I'm not familiar with build out analysis that have done that, but I don't see why you couldn't. When you do an analysis and you're doing your parcel assessment, you can do a condition study at the same time. Wouldn't be that much more difficult. A lot of the stuff you do on the phone now.
Yeah,
Like all those units.
dovetail to that is a comment that an owner of several rental properties, a comment he made in one of our comprehensive planning meetings, and it was really significant. I've not even thought of this. He mentioned that we look at the age of some of the homes, rentals close to downtown. I mean, I knew it, but I really didn't hit home. The average age of some of those rental homes that really have not structurally been maintained. And some are close to 100 years old. And that's going to be a big issue.
You could just go down the street. I can tell you the homes that have more noise problems, more trash problems, more parking,
deteriorating structure,
and they're the same ones.
Foundations.
And are we enforcing what the ordinances we have on those, or do we the other way, or is it not?
Well, sort of goes down to where the landlord. But you go into our neighborhood, I look at our house, sort of rebuilding our house piece by piece suddenly, but it seems like everybody every year has got a project going on.
Yes, right.
Housing.
Low ownership.
Doing work with that. You rarely see that on the rental house.
Yeah.
I mean, unless something's about to collapse.
Yeah,
And then you start to see it. Wonder how much is the city paying attention, not just to that, but there's a house down the street from us that some creepy guy lives in there, and the place that there is like 20 feet of trash in the backyard. He's got a car that there's no possible way he can get out. You keep wondering, is the city ever going to come by and take a look at this?
Wonder no more.
Pardon?
Wonder no more.
Okay, good. Well,
You got a code enforcement office, I'm sure.
right, but that was funny.
They're probably overwhelmed with them.
So
That was like
distinguish
years ago. It seemed like takes was everything, and you don't see them as much.
but just the issue of the useful life of a particular structure that's currently being rented, and its useful life, and what's it's not been structurally maintained.
Okay.
Then what does that mean for us in the next 5 or 10 years? And you can actually look at certain blocks in the city where those homes are, and is that fine for development in the future if they really have no historical value in the zoo? Maybe they don't, or that historical value is gone. I see that as part of a conversation about affordable housing.
I want to pick up.
Yeah.
So can I inject a couple things real quick and place. So one, the house you're talking to, I can talk to you afterwards about this.
Sure.
The city's been in court with for years.
Okay.
So sometimes you look at things and you wonder, is the city doing anything? And call, because we can tell you, sometimes we're not, because we're a very small staff. That's not a big city, but much bigger than we can see every day, all day. So I know exactly what house you're talking about. So we are in court with them. As far as the rental properties, we do inspect them typically every 13 months. I say typically because some properties are owner occupied rental licenses and those have a longer.
But for the non-owner occupied, we inspect them every 13 months. What we use is an international property maintenance code that's a minimum property maintenance code. So by law, we enforce to this minimum standard. So, you know, it's making it safe for the day we're there. And I think that's the other challenge, that sometimes from the outside looking in, you go by and go, oh my gosh, the window's broke. Oh my gosh. But the day we were there, it was okay. Or if it wasn't, we wrote it up. We send letters. They have to prepare it within a certain time period. If they don't, we have enforcement action that we can take. But it is, and we acknowledge, and that is the standard the city has. It's a minimum property maintenance code. So,
Not really about the foundation structure.
oh, it can be about the foundation structure. Oh yeah, sure. Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are the main things actually. And then there was one more thing I was going to say, it just slipped my mind. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to fill in all the blanks.
I'm sorry, Andy.
I thought you were good.
I had my back to you, but.
I was just wondering, I mean, I think that we have there's a tendency that I've already seen in the comprehensive plan update process, or let's jump to a solution, let's find the tool right now, we already sort of know that. So I'm wondering, how would you, I guess, two questions about slowing the roll. How do you slow the roll as far as like, let's jump to a solution right away, we already know what the problem is, versus let's take 6 months to really think about it. And also, I've gotten a lot of feedback of the scope is big but not big enough, or it's, you know, small but not small. Like we have these 4 focus areas, right? Social equity overall, housing, public health, sustainable areas. How do you have any suggestions on how we can limit our scope, like to keep this, knowing that it's not a new comprehensive plan, it's updated, and also like, yes, there will be time for the tools when it comes to the zoning ordinance. Any thoughts on that?
That's great point. Yeah.
I struggle with this all the time myself, so I'm just thinking for
Well,
advice.
time.
That's the expert.
Yeah, right. The expert. Some of this stuff is complicated, and limiting scope is often done just by the limited time that we have to spend on that topic, and fortunately, but you know, and to the extent, yeah.
There's the thought, you've got the 4 themes, you know, focuses, you've got to continually bring things back to those. It's like your vision. We have our strategic plan has themes. The themes have objectives. You've got to keep bringing people back to that level. We had an issue of housing here. It went down to that house for streets. Well, you know, that's not something the comprehensive plan can install, but it's an issue. Parking lot. Create that parking lot. And these are the issues so that we know it's going to get, you know, thought about and addressed when it might be already, but keep bringing it back to that vision, to those overarching themes. And it's good. It's a meeting control kind of concept. And if you can at least parking lot it, you've noted it, but we got to get back to the level. And I think one of the other emerging challenges, it's not emerging, it's always been there, is consensus building. Consensus doesn't mean we all agree, but we understand why. And so I think we've got to keep on understanding what consensus means, especially in a diverse community like this. So
Yeah. It's not 100% agreement, but I think that comes to be like ranking or voting or whatever you want. Prioritization is really important, I think, to when we're looking to scope.
But keep coming back to those themes, because in those themes, you're going to develop the buckets of.
There are people saying that.
Good. No, it's great. I didn't think
There's one gentleman who liked this.
So let me throw out a concept to you, and then I'm just doing this with you all because you're forward-thinking people. And one of the things that we've been working on, our work at the center, is this issue of structural abandonment, which relates to decline in the housing stock. And we don't think about structures having an end of life. We don't think about the end of life of things we build. And we're in this system of build it, keep it for a while, and eventually we throw it away and throw it away. It's a very unsustainable structural use of materials. It's silly. Eventually, we're gonna have to start thinking about things have an end of life, structures have an end of life, and we need to think about their end of life. So that at the end of a structure's useful life, one thing, we don't stick to taxpayers with tearing down the dilapidated, abandoned industrial, residential, commercial property, which happens now. You know, so we think about how do we secure the financial resources so that at the end of structured life, there are resources to pay for the removal of that structure that doesn't place a burden on the entire community. And right now, that's what we're doing. So that whatever, who wants to leave it, just leave it abandoned. We all end up paying for it. All right, and secondly, would we design structures in a way that at their end of useful life, we might maximize the reuse of the materials, salvage the materials? So kind of think about a building code that would incorporate end of life concepts. I mean, these are all forward thinking issues that are trying to get out there. Some of the things we do now that we have legal precedent for on end of life, cell towers. Think about that. We build a cell tower, we require the cell tower firm to purchase a bond, and then you, the local government, owns that bond, and then when that cell tower goes out of use, you take it down. Because that's obviously a health and safety hazard for a fall and, you know, kill somebody. We do it with these giant windmills that we create for electric purposes generating. We do it for other uses like oil pipelines, but we don't through. But we say you will post a bond. And I know this being discussed in the legislature too. You build it, you have a responsibility for its end of life. Think about incorporating something like that in your sustainability conversation. You know, so that you're responsible for its end of life. Think about an insurance company who monitors the use of it. You pay a premium to an insurance company, you own a property, you pay a premium to the insurance company, and at the end of the useful life, they come and take it apart, take it down. And if you're doing something bad on the property that ends up contaminating the site, then insurance company is going to increase your premium. Right? Just like bad drivers get increased premiums for driving poorly. Increase for land use, building structure use, increased premiums. So we shift the burden of removing abandoned and out-of-date structures off of the public sector, which is where it sits now, onto the users and consumers of the goods and services or the places that are being built and used, which is more just, I think. And so anyway, it's just a forward-thinking idea. Think circular built environment. Because we can't do it like this for very much longer. We're just, think about the old growth wood and the old houses of our community and the kind of wood that's getting used now and how expensive it is. It's not even close to comparable in quality. I mean, we're already moving through the materials quickly. Anyway, I wanted to throw that idea out to you. Come on, East Lansing, be radical. I'll be there with you.
We hear from experts, be radical East Lansing. We should make that the title, subtitle of our ordinance.
Now, be innovative. Thoughtful, innovative.
Thank you so much, Rich.
Yeah. I think the speakers making it possible.
And don't forget, cityofeastlansing.com/plan update in those 4 focus areas are social equity, housing, sustainability, and public health. So thanks for being here.
Okay.
Sure.